Shadow the Hedgehog is not good. It's not a good video game. Pretty much everybody agrees on that. So it comes as some surprise that its villain is apparently returning in Shadow Generations. That's some unusually direct acknowledgement of a game that Sega usually relegates to Twitter memes. Granted, Generations hasn't set the highest bar for that, but it made me wonder if Shadow's only solo outing was actually as bad as I had heard. There's gotta be something there, right? How much could I come to like it if I was actively trying to? Well, I've got it loaded up on the old Xbox, so let's give it a go. Oh boy. So we're picking up after Sonic Heroes, meaning Shadow has amnesia from his little orbital skydive at the end of Sonic Adventure 2. He's brooding about this, as he is wont to do, when the Black Comet comes by and aliens start an all-out invasion of Westopolis in the span of 10 seconds. Black Doom shows up and offers to tell Shadow about his past if he brings him the 7 Chaos Emeralds. And then Shadow explodes! Ah, he's fine, carry on. Westopolis is our first taste of the gameplay, and it's a weird first impression. Shadow the Hedgehog takes the standard 3D Sonic formula and awkwardly mutates it to lean towards combat. Our boy's got most of his moveset from Sonic Adventure 2, losing the stomp, but getting the triangle jump from Heroes. Movement's a little odd though. Shadow is still fairly speedy, but he's got some heft, and throwing him around feels a bit slippery. For what it's worth, I do think it feels better than it did in Heroes. Unwieldy though it may be, movement in Shadow feels appreciably consistent in a way that the erratic jerky control of the prior game never quite manages to. You can adjust to it, and after a couple hours, it didn't bother me anymore. But the main addition is guns! Yeah, my boy's packing heat! The team system from Heroes has mercifully been tossed out and replaced with the ability to pick up and use weapons dropped from enemies or boxes. Shadow the Hedgehog with a photorealistic gun is obviously an amazing image worth creating for its own sake, but I guess they're useful in gameplay too. It's nothing too fancy. You hold fire, and if there's something to aim at, Shadow will aim at it. And there usually is, because stages are chock full of enemies. You can run past most of them, but sometimes they're mandatory, and a lot of missions are about picking fights. Right, missions, yeah. So, a playthrough of Shadow the Hedgehog is only 6 levels long, but which 6 levels you play and where the story goes is determined by your route through this big ol' chart. Most stages have hero and dark followers offering you side missions. Doing the hero mission moves you down the chart, and doing the dark mission moves you up it. Yeah, that feels backwards to me too. We'll get to the unpleasant specifics of those missions later, but you can move straight ahead by just reaching the end of the level, so for now, let's focus on that. Stages typically have 2 factions of enemies, a good side and an evil side. It's actually pretty neat. You'll often find them infighting. It does a nice job of livening up the place. There's also vehicles, but, well, those are a little underwhelming when Shadow cannot run them on foot. They're only really worthwhile when the game forces you to use them. So that's the long and short of it for now, and it isn't awful. It works alright. I am having a downright okay time. Running through these like speed stages is giving me enough of that 3D Sonic fun, even if it doesn't measure up to the adventure games. Speaking of not measuring up, wow, these cutscenes.
Tell the commanding generals that the United Federation will never surrender to terrorists.
Terrorists?
Yes, Mr. President.
Why do you have a photo? Where did you even get that? At least you get these nice pre-rendered cutscenes from Blur Studio. Those look great as always, it sure beats whatever's going on in Heroes, but the story itself just amounts to Shadow teleporting around to find Chaos Emeralds. Also, he might be a robot, jury's out on that. It's all a pretty shallow excuse just to shuttle him between levels, so how are those? Well, they're not half bad. Every playthrough starts with Westopolis, which is a fine enough first stage. It's not especially hard, but it's a good showcase for the factions and weapons, and it sets the tone that this game desperately wants to have. Beyond that, levels vary quite a bit in their look and how hard they lean into platforming over combat, but with certain exceptions, I think most of them are solid. The environments skew a little bland, and a lot of it retreads SA2, but the stages look fine, and the music's all good. Obviously, it's a Sonic team game. They do reuse environments, but you usually won't run into a repeat on the same playthrough, so in that sense, it's kind of more varied than the usual 2-act structure. Here on our neutral run, I especially like to shout out Lava Shelter. I started having terrible Rail Canyon flashbacks the second I saw this level, but surprisingly, it's pretty fun. Lots of high-speed rail grinding, you'll love to see it. And it was here that I realized something. Shadow the Hedgehog actually isn't all that janky. Now, I'm certainly not going to say it's supremely polished or anything, but coming off of Sonic Heroes, it's much less offensively buggy. Like literally offensive. Heroes feels like it's constantly trying to kill you with the control spasming or the game just deciding you should die. But that doesn't really happen in Shadow, which makes its sluggishness a lot more palatable to me. The boss fights are still pretty bad though. They're almost always obnoxiously tedious or laughably trivial the second you find a gun. Which ones and how many you run into depends on your route. There's always at least one at the end. After beating up this strangely atonal slot machine tank, we reach our ending and Gamma finally gets to kill Eggman.
I am Shadow Android, the ultimate battle life form created by Eggman. You may have created me, Doctor, but I will now lead this empire and androids will rule! This is who I am!
Eggman, target acquired. Locked and loaded, fire.
What?
Good for him. Good for him. So, thoughts after the first playthrough? Not bad. For all the flack it gets, I enjoyed it well enough. You know what? I'm filling up for another round. Let's do this. Okay, let's try being a goody two-shoes and see where that takes us. And that means we need to do the hero mission and... right. So a lot of the missions for either side are to kill a set number of enemies of the opposing side. That makes sense, not the worst idea in the world. The rather infamous problem is that it's not just killing some of the good or evil enemies, it's killing all of the good or evil enemies. All of them. 100%. That means you're almost definitely going to find yourself combing over a level looking for the one random alien blob you didn't spot earlier, and it's every bit as annoying as they say. Sonic Team did try to cushion the blow by letting you freely teleport between any checkpoint in the level, and that does help a lot, but it would be so much less annoying if it just said which areas still have enemies in them. Still, that isn't all the objectives. Most of the time, one or both missions are to interact with or destroy a handful of obvious objects in the level, and the mission giver will point out when you miss one, so those aren't a major issue. Occasionally there's some other specific objective, but in the end, the enemy killing missions are the only ones that are remotely that bad. They're, still really bad though. Since we're going for the hero missions, we've got the regular Sonic cast following us around this time. Their writing is a little bizarre in this game.
Just what are these black creatures?
Don't call them that! For how edgy this game is, you'd think all the characters would follow suit, but for the most part they don't. They more or less act the same as in Heroes, but a bit skewed. Like 95% of the time their writing isn't anything out of the ordinary, except sometimes Tails will just get really hyped about how cool a gun is. I mean, I guess he does build those onto his planes, but it's just weird, man. The odd one out is Sonic, who instead of being edgy is just completely obnoxious.
Space colony. Ark. This place. So familiar. But why? This is where I... Maria? Died?
Oh yeah, bring it on! Looks like the party's getting started. Time to rock and roll!
Sonic!
You up for this,
Timing, man! It's so jarring and out of place that I'm kind of convinced it's intentional. Like, is this just how Shadow sees everyone? Most of the cast is fine and then Sonic alone is supremely insufferable? That would explain a lot, actually. I would hate the guy too. Not that Shadow's any smarter, really.
A Chaos Emerald? You've gotta be kidding me, guys. This is like taking candy from a baby, which is fine by me.
The levels in this route are a bit more of a mixed bag. Chasing an alien tank in Lethal Highway is fun, but then here comes Circus Park careening into this game and it's just wildly out of place. You could drop this into Sonic Heroes as is and it'd fit right in. Fun level though. The hero mission is to get 400 rings using these shooting galleries in carnival games, and it's pretty flexible. Just don't fall off the edge. No, the problem child here is Lost Colony. Lost Colony is terrible. It's a flashback on the Ark, and it has this enormous labyrinthine map you get around on these super glacial gun lifts. It's just a complete slog of a stage, and to add insult to injury, the hero mission is to find and kill all 35 artificial chaos. Now's a good time to mention that the stages at the extreme ends of the hero and dark routes don't have the opposite mission. Instead, the neutral mission takes you back towards the middle of the chart, and the hero or dark mission makes you continue straight. Meaning I'm roped into doing the hero mission here. Yippee. It ends eventually though, and one decent stage later, my second run is finished.
I'm Shadow the Hedgehog, and I made a promise that I intend to keep. With the power of these emeralds, Black Doom and his army are finished. This is who I am.
Okay, updated thoughts. My enthusiasm is waning. Between having to hunt down enemies for missions and Lost Colony existing, that run took twice as long as the first. It didn't all suck, but man, that kind of put me in a bad mood. I want to take it out on someone. I want to take it out on everyone! The world sucks, let's blow it up! Evil alien dude, I'm with you. Trying to hunt down all the gun troops and kill them. Well, knock them out. They had to tow it down for E10+. Black Doom is pleased and wants us to go access the United Federation's mainframe. That makes sense. Gonna go break into a military base or... Huh? What's this?
Shadow, this is the information highway system that they call cyberspace.
What?
On your mark, get set. We're riding on the internet, cyberspace, set free. Hello, virtual reality.
Interactive appetite, searching for a website, a window to the world, got to get online.
Take a spin, now you're in with the techno set. You're going surfing on the internet.
What? Yeah, this isn't quite where I thought we were gonna end up. I've been avoiding talking about this game's edginess because it's pretty self-evident, but I find it's less committed to that than you'd think. Like, what's actually happening here? Shadow the Hedgehog has amnesia and moral conflict and a gun. He rides a motorcycle, he hates authority, and he swears. In Circus Park. And again, the other characters aren't especially edgy either. I mean, Omega is homicidal and murders Eggman in cold blood, but that's just how he is. And now that I think about it, the story isn't really that edgy either, right? Like, it's just a standard alien invasion. Sonic Adventure 2 was darker than that, arguably even Adventure 1 was darker than that. So really, it's just Shadow, right? If you block out his whole deal, it's a pretty standard Sonic game in tone. He's just been transplanted right into the middle of it, which makes the whole attempt at grit feel real wonky because it's blatantly out of place at all times. It comes across like an 8-year-old wearing a death metal shirt and sunglasses in the McDonald's play place. A lesser man might say that this complete lack of tonal consistency undermines the game's attempt to be cool. I would argue that it makes them land infinitely better. Here's the thing, right? There is no reality where this family-friendly mascot platformer about an anthropomorphic cartoon hedgehog with a gun is unironically cool in the way they wanted it to be. It was never going to happen. But you can't admit that because then the possibility of it working that way is lost entirely, so everything has got to be played straight. But whether on purpose or by accident, having the edginess be cushioned between all the usual Sonic stuff inadvertently sorta works around this. Like, if you aren't on board for it being cool, it is so radically and confidently uncool that it kind of loops itself and becomes endearing in its own right, which is kinda cool. And in a way, isn't that what this entire franchise is? As a response to Mario, Sonic was created with the express purpose of being cool. You see a lot of video essays argue that that's its weakness because what's considered cool changes over time. But I think it's also why it has so much staying power despite the game's wildly inconsistent quality. The first rule of being cool is showing confidence. Therefore, a Sonic game must never even consider that anything it's doing is uncool or a mistake. The result of that mindset is a series with these big bombastic ideas that goes all in on them in a very, very earnest way. When the implementation works, they're a thrill to play, but even when it doesn't, they have this infectious enthusiasm to them that's really easy to get swept up in. They invite you to just bask in their carefree sense of spectacle. And I can't say it doesn't work. I mean, look at me. I am an ostensibly adult man. I vote, I pay taxes, I have a bachelor's degree on my shelf, and here I am playing a mediocre at best edgy children's game from 20 years ago and shamelessly enjoying it. There's something special about that. Maybe a childish kind of enjoyment, but it's a very real one that few series manage to elicit, and that is what's timeless. And it's not just me either. You look at any recording from Sonic Symphony and what do you see? The crowd going wild. They're loving it. Everyone's singing along, even to music they didn't grow up with, even to this game's theme. The Sonic franchise has seen quite a resurgence in the last few years, and I think it's due to an understanding of this from both ends. Sega spent the 2010s rejecting the shamelessness that made Sonic work so well, so it's no surprise that it returned to relevancy on the backs of Sonic Mania, a game lovingly made by die-hard fans, and Sonic Frontiers, a game that drops all pretense of restraint and just goes full Dragon Ball AMV. I think part of it is also that the general online landscape in the 2010s was extremely critical. The aspiration in the gaming space was for some vision of objectivity, and that doesn't jive with the Sonic games very well, so there was a period where the prevailing thought was that the series has sucked forever and always. But that's just not how anyone experiences a game, and I think a lot of people have gotten tired of that mindset. Now we're at a place where even the bad games are appreciated, even this one. The ridiculous edgy aesthetics of Shadow the Hedgehog have some charm to them, so suddenly there are tons of Shadow memes. Obviously they're all steeped in irony, but I do think they come from some place of genuine affection for this goofy little mess. This whole tangent is to say that, yes, Shadow the Hedgehog is a stupidly edgy game. It tries extremely hard to be gritty, and it falls flat on its face every single time. I like it that way. Fight me. Anyway, the gameplay on this route isn't bad. There aren't any kill quotas after Westopolis, so it's all pretty forgiving exploration missions. That's 1 point for evil. The final boss is terrible though. Despite how wrong it looks, this is seriously how you're supposed to do it, and it takes forever. So Shadow, what are you gonna do with your newfound power?
With the power of these emeralds, I'm going to destroy this damn planet. This is who I am.
Right, there are 2 more ending levels we haven't gotten to yet, so let's try Neutral Hero. This is the first time we're repeating levels other than Westopolis, and things go a lot faster once you know the score. That's true of all Sonic games, but they don't usually incorporate it into a regular playthrough this way. Adventure 1 and Heroes sorta did, if you squinted, but they were remixed between character stories, so familiarity didn't really transfer in the same way. Honestly, I don't hate it in concept. Having it be unique stages all throughout would definitely be ideal, but people replay speed stages in these games a lot anyway, so in that sense, it's not forcing me to do anything I wouldn't do on my own. I mean, it's not like they're gonna make me replay it 10 times or something ridiculous like that. Right. This route's new levels have some quirks. Space Gadget is a fun throwback to Crazy Gadget from SA2, but the hero mission is a race with Sonic that you win by getting to the finish within 5 minutes. Meaning that for the neutral mission, you just have to sit around next to the exit for a while if you got there too fast. I don't really know what the plan there was. Then Cosmic Fall is the jankiest level in the game as the camera refuses to point where it needs to go and you have no depth perception while you're platforming over a giant death pit on moving platforms. I figured out later that you should just never touch the right stick here, and that smoothed it over quite a lot, but at that point they should have just locked the camera. Anyway, that's another route done.
I am Shadow the Hedgehog, a research experiment gone deadly wrong. I've caused so much destruction. I should never have been created. This is who I am.
Hey, don't go there! Yet!
Victor, what is wrong with you? Okie dokie, Neutral Dark is last. Airfleet's pretty cool, but the Doom is Diet Lost Colony and even more of a maze. Sonic levels should never require a map.
This facility is grotesquely large. I am not impressed.
I concur. Last level is nothing special, we fight the annoying boss again, you know the drill.
I'm Shadow the Hedgehog, the ultimate life form born to protect and serve the Dark Lord, Black Doom. With the power of these Chaos Emeralds, this world will become the Dark Empire. This is who I am.
Nice maniacal laugh, man. That's pretty good. So that's 5 playthroughs done, and all of the final stages hit. It's time for the last story to unlock, right? Right? Oh god, we need all the endings, don't we? See, the final stage in a playthrough only has a hero and a dark mission, and doing each of them gets you a different ending. I've done every stage once, meaning I have to do them all a second time. So, Before we start down that road, I'd like to take a moment to openly shill. I recently made a, potentially regrettable investment for the next video, so to try to offset the eye-watering amount of money I just spent, I've opened a Patreon and YouTube memberships. A few bucks a month gets you early video access and your name in the credits, and a couple more will make your name bigger and let you ask a question in the credits Q&A. I'll probably add more benefits later, so stay tuned on that. A quick heads up though, the Patreon tiers are $1 cheaper than the YouTube ones. I'm mirroring all the benefits the best I can, but YouTube's automatically come with some comment and chat stuff that I can't replicate on Patreon's end, so I wanted to even that out somehow. Given YouTube's huge cut from these, they actually still make more from the Patreon ones, so if you don't care about chat stuff, then go for that. Anyway, funny Ronin game. Alright, time to mop up. I'm going for a full neutral ending, but I missed a hero level earlier, so I'm gonna hit that on the way. Swerving between hero and dark like this really showcases how badly the storytelling collapses under its own weight. Shadow just spontaneously teleports between most of the levels because it'd be too complicated to make natural transitions between all of them, but that obviously makes it super disjointed. And really, the branching routes don't even make logical sense. Every playthrough has Shadow finding all 7 Chaos Emeralds, but he's going to different places each time. So like, are they following him? Is being evil causing them to move? How does that work? There's also some routes that cause basically identical cutscenes to appear back to back in the same playthrough, and that's just clunky. Actually, now that I think about it, Shadow's doing all this to learn about his past, right? Why? We spend most stages running around with a Sonic character, and nearly all of them were there for Adventure 2. They all know who Shadow is. He could walk into Westopolis and immediately go, "Hey Sonic, who am I?" What? What? And he'd be good to go. Man, it's like this game is dumb or something. Some of the cutscenes are still hilarious, though.
Well, well, if it isn't Shadow! Your timing is impeccable! You know that Eggman fella pretty well, don't ya? Well, we need your help to hack into his computer. Don't ask why, and we don't have any more time to waste!
Well, what a coincidence. I'd like to know what the good old doctor's up to as well.
Sadly, that genius hacking technique opened a portal to Mad Matrix. I knew the internet was a series of tubes, but Jesus Christ. I mean, it's ambitious, but 19 minutes for an A rank is generally a sign that you've gone too far. SBO acts completely normal, by the way. I'm taking this as further proof that Shadow just can't stand Sonic in particular. Since we're going neutral, we're back to Magma Base, and I'm still thinking this is the best stage in the game. The Dark Mission is to activate these defense systems that raise the lava level in the surrounding area, which makes the following platforming sections a bit harder. It's neat. I like it.
I am Shadow Android, the ultimate life form, a copy of Shadow the Hedgehog. With the power of these emeralds, I will be stronger than him. This is who I am.
Okay, yep, that's 6. Keep going. I am so sick of Westopolis. You know, I've realized that about half these missions don't make any practical sense to play. All that matters for the endings is where you end up, and staying on the neutral route is by far the fastest way to move forward because you can just speedrun the level. Trying to max out Hero or Dark earlier than necessary locks you into playing everything in the most time-consuming ways possible. So in the end, it makes the most sense just to book it through the neutral stages and then swerve in whichever direction you want to end up. I'm just saying, I wouldn't feel the need to optimize like this if we ended 2 loops ago.
I am Shadow the Hedgehog, the ultimate life form, born and raised aboard the Ark. I shall live on. I am the protector of the Ark. I am living proof of the ultimate life form. This is who I am.
It was nice of them to include multiple ending themes, considering you see them so often. We've entered an endless recursion of time. This route is probably the funniest in the game. Shadow does his own thing on the neutral route before stumbling into racing Sonic on Space Gadget. Then he wins, remembers who Sonic is, remembers that he hates him, and drops everything to side with Black Doom just out of spite.
I'm Shadow the Hedgehog, and now, I am the most powerful hedgehog in the world! The power of these emeralds makes me invincible. I am the ultimate hedgehog. This is who I am.
You know, they came up with a name for every possible route through this game. All 326 of them. Allow me to share some highlights. Punishment, thy name is Ruin. Died in lovely darkness. Requiem for the heavens. Gone with the darkness. The sealed away ark of sin. Funeral procession in space. Destiny 2. Man, I just don't have anything else to say at this point. You can finish the arc without getting off the Blackwing, that's pretty cool. Kinda feels like Star Fox. Here, let me just... yeah.
The Hedgehog, the ultimate life form born to rule all. I and only I know what is best. No one can tell me what to do. This is who I am.
Oh, thank God that's all of them. That was... yeah, that was bad. 5 playthroughs, I'm cool with. The replayed levels went by quick, and I was getting something new out of it each time around. 10 is... it's just too much. It's too much, man. But it's over now. With that, we've unlocked the last story. As usual, it's a separate thing from the rest of the game, in this case taking place after some unspecified ending. I bet we can narrow it down though. Let's see. So Shadow's on Black Comet when he gets all the Chaos Emeralds, meaning it has to be the neutral dark path or the full hero path. He's willing to cooperate with Black Doom, so the neutral dark hero and hero maxing endings are off the table. And it can't be the neutral dark ending because he doesn't have any loyalty to Black Doom here. So by process of elimination... wait, that one's canon? Black Doom shows up to deliver his villainous monologue and finally tell us the reason he needed the Chaos Emeralds. The Black Comet needs to be on the surface to do whatever nefarious things it does, but it doesn't move fast enough to not burn up on re-entry, so he needs to use Chaos Control to teleport it down there. That's it, he didn't need them for anything else. That's kind of mundane, right? Like, that's just physics. He wants to do all of this to use humanity as an energy source, and he partnered with Gerald Robotnik to create Shadow to bring the emeralds to him. Wait, so let me get this straight. His whole 50-year plan was to help Gerald make Shadow so he could come back 50 years later and have Shadow bring him the Chaos Emeralds that have unlimited power solely so he could warp his comet to the surface to use humans as a power source. Masterful gambit, sir. We've got 10 minutes to chase him down through the last way, and it's pretty underwhelming. Usually the last story stages are a nice challenging gauntlet that tests all of your skills, but this is just another Black Comet level. The only difference between this and the other two are that you have to grind to fill your Chaos Control gauge to get through some areas, which isn't really difficult or fun. When we catch up with Black Doom, Shadow drops one more
"You're going down!"
But then Black Doom is like,
I am your father.
But then, Team Chaotix accidentally broadcasts a message from old Gerald who tells Shadow to kick Doom's teeth in, and that perks him right back up. And Black Doom, ever the good sport, just leaves the Chaos Emeralds lying around for him. Hey, you know what that means. Super Shadow fight, yes! It's a pretty good one too, certainly more involved than either of the adventure ones. I Am All of Me is blasting, the fight isn't lasting 30 seconds, life is good. This is also where Eggman calls in to say that he was lying about Shadow being a robot and that he's the real one, but for some reason this happens 8.5 minutes into the fight so no one ever hears it. Good design. Once we're done throwing down, Shadow double taps.
Put the past behind me. Chaos Control!
So, that's Shadow the Hedgehog. It was, flawed. Very, very flawed. Despite that, I came here trying to love it, and by Jove, I think I pulled it off. Okay, love might be a little strong, that ending grind was awful, but I don't think its reputation is really deserved. When everything comes together, it's a pretty fun time, and at its worst, I can only really accuse it of being mediocre and overlong. There are much worse things for a game to be. In fact, I'm going to tick a lot of people off and argue that Shadow is actually better than Sonic Heroes. While its highs are lower, I think a lot of the issues that Shadow is infamous for are present and often worse in the prior game. Like, take movement for example. It's a common complaint with Shadow, but as I mentioned earlier, it's something you can get comfortable with, and it's not weirdly inconsistent or constantly stabbing you in the back like it is in Heroes. Getting stuck on an enemy hunt sucks, but it's not really that common, and a fourth of Heroes is basically the same thing. They'll both make you stop and fight enemies, but Heroes will do it with worse combat. I think the repetition is more up to preference. While both games ultimately have you playing a similar number of stages, Heroes has you playing versions of the same ones 4 times each, and Shadow... well, you know how Shadow is. So yeah, personally, I do like Shadow the Hedgehog more than Sonic Heroes, but man, it could be so much better with a few changes, right? Reduce the ending requirement, loosen up the mission quotas, maybe improve the controls a bit, and... yeah, you knew where this was going. It's the Sonic community we're talking about, of course somebody's done it. Shadow the Hedgehog Reloaded is a mod for the GameCube version that addresses pretty much all of the game's biggest problems. It only takes 3 endings to get the final story, enemy quotas let you miss a few, and Shadow feels noticeably snappier. But then they kept going! The game runs in widescreen, and with emulation you can crank it up to 4K 60 FPS. Secret doors, which were so trivial that I haven't even bothered to mention them, have been stripped out and turned into alternate level paths. Red rings have been added, the ranking system now has S ranks, the levels are remixed to be more challenging, unused music's been restored. It is a comprehensive improvement and elevates the game to a point where I would even dare say it's recommendable. If you're going to play Shadow the Hedgehog, this is the way you should do it. And you know, maybe you should. I get it, Shadow Generations, it makes sense now. Fair play. Still wish you weren't zip-tied to a Generations remaster that I don't really want or need, but you do you. In the meantime... oh boy. This is usually where I'd have a Q&A for Patreon supporters and YouTube members, but seeing as I just opened the memberships, there wouldn't really be anything to answer, so just this once I let anybody call in. But join up if you want in for the future ones. What are your top 3 favorite games? Yeah, I'll do you 22 better. I always have a hard time answering this kind of thing, because I tend to like games for entirely different reasons. Like, do I like Outer Wilds more than Intruder? I don't know, they have nothing in common. So, consider this kind of a general ordering where my favorites are towards the top. What's the worst game you've ever played? If a game is that bad, I'm just gonna stop playing it unless I'm obligated not to, so... honestly, it's probably Ludo Karts. It was only half an hour long, but it was a purely joyless half hour. I enjoyed seeing all the comments from people saying that it's actually a board game from their country and that everyone there hates it. I'm glad it's a universal experience like that. What is the origin of your profile picture? A little bread guy. I've had this little fella for years. I just think he's neat. How many Oppos have you murdered in cold blood? I'm not telling the feds, but it's a lot, man. There'd be blood on my hands if Oppos had any. What is your next goal on YouTube? Breaking even on this thing, followed by
Complete global saturation.
You can help with the first part by becoming a supporter and joining the funny list over there. Second part is my job though, so don't worry about that.